The sound of glass shattering echoed down the plush corridor of the Hotel Wellington. Maria froze, her hands still gripping the handle of the cleaning cart. She turned just in time to see a man stumble against the wall. His face pale, his hand clutching his chest. A half-empty glass of champagne rolled across the patterned carpet, bumping against her shoe. "Help!" A woman screamed in French, her accent sharp and terrified. "Il tombe, mon mari." Maria's heart jumped. She pushed her cart aside and rushed forward, kneeling down beside the man. His lips were turning a faint shade of blue, his eyes wide and unfocused. He gasped for air, his chest rising unevenly. Around them, chaos broke loose, guests speaking in different languages, staff members frozen in shock. Maria had no medical training, but instinct and sheer humanity drove her. She touched the man's shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me? Stay with me, please." The man's wife sobbed, clutching his hand. Aidez-la, Aidez-la. Maria's mind raced. She had no authority here. She was a maid, invisible to the world of luxury that paraded through this hotel. But when she heard the woman's words, her brain unlocked a memory: university classrooms, language labs, professors drilling vocabulary. The words returned like old friends. She turned to the woman, switching seamlessly. "Madame, respires. Il va recevoir de l'aide. Calmez-vous." The woman blinked at her, stunned. Maria grabbed the emergency phone on the wall, her hands trembling but firm. "Ambulance. A man is having a heart attack," she shouted in English. The dispatcher asked for details. French, German, Spanish. People were shouting around her. Panic multiplied with the barrier of words. Maria pressed the receiver hard to her ear. Without thinking, she repeated, "Un homme une crise cardiaque. Vita, ein Mann hat einen Herzinfarkt. Schnell. Un hombre está teniendo un ataque al corazón. Rapido." Her voice carried down the hall, cutting through the chaos. The dispatcher paused. "Help is on the way. Stay with him." Maria dropped the receiver and pressed the man's hand between hers. "You'll be okay," she whispered in English, then in French again. "Ça va aller." The man's grip tightened weakly. His wife stared at Maria as if seeing her for the first time. For a moment, silence hovered over the scene. The chaos of languages melted into the sound of one steady voice, Maria's. The sirens came minutes later, though to Maria it felt like an eternity. Paramedics rushed through the corridor, their medical bags snapping open. She stepped back, suddenly aware again of the cleaning cart, the uniform, the way her knees ached against the carpet. "Move aside, miss," one paramedic said. His tone wasn't unkind, but it was dismissive. Maria nodded quickly, retreating. She clasped her hands together, her breath still shaky. The wife clung to her husband as the paramedics worked. "Merci, thank you," she whispered toward Maria. But already the hotel manager had arrived, fussing with his tie, ushering guests back, apologizing in polished tones. He didn't look at Maria. He didn't ask what she had done. He didn't see the sweat on her brow or the tremor in her hands. As the stretcher rolled away and the sirens faded, Maria returned to her cart. She picked up her mop, her rag, her gloves, the tools of her invisibility. She pushed the cart forward, as though nothing had happened. But inside her chest, her heart beat with a stubborn rhythm. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Flashback, the weight of dreams. Later that evening, Maria sat in the staff break room, staring at her reflection in the vending machine's glass. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Around her, chatter rose and fell. Co-workers gossiping, scrolling on their phones, laughing at videos. Her mind, though, was back in Mexico City. She remembered the smell of old books in the university library, the excitement of conjugating verbs in German, the thrill of mastering a French idiom. She had been so certain then, so full of belief that languages would carry her across borders, into embassies, maybe even the United Nations. But life had other plans. Her father lost his job. Her mother grew ill. Bills piled up. Maria dropped out of her program after 2 years. The dream shrank into survival. A cousin in New York offered her work, cleaning. The kind of labor no one notices until it isn't done. And so she came here, to the Wellington Hotel, where every day she scrubbed away fingerprints, dusted off invisible dirt, and swallowed her voice. Until today. The gossip. "You hear what happened?" one maid whispered. "They say Maria saved some guest." With languages or something. Another snorted. Please. She probably just called 911. Anyone can do that. Still, the wife said Maria spoke French. And German. Maria? Maria, laughter. She can barely speak English sometimes. Maria turned her head away, pretending not to hear. Her cheeks burned. It wasn't the first time. To them, she was only a maid. Not a person with a past. Not a woman with knowledge. Just a uniform that blended into the wallpaper. But tonight, when she closed her eyes, she didn't hear their voices. She heard her own, shouting, pleading, commanding life to stay. She remembered the grip of that man's hand, the trust in his wife's eyes. And she knew, something had shifted. The night passed slowly. Maria returned to her small rented room in Queens, where the walls were thin and the radiator hissed. She lay on her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. For years she had hidden away her languages, burying them under linens and mop water. They belonged to another life. A girl with bigger dreams than her reality could afford. But now, what if they meant something again? Her phone buzzed with a message from her cousin. You work too much. You should rest. Maria typed back, something happened today. Then she erased it. She didn't know how to explain. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would return to the hotel. Tomorrow, she would be a maid again. But tonight, just for herself, she whispered aloud in the languages she once loved. Bon nuit. Guten Nacht. Buenas noches. Good night. Her voice filled the empty room. A soft chorus of the many women she might have been. And somewhere deep inside, Maria felt the first stirrings of change. The hum of the staff break room was always the same, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The faint smell of reheated food drifting from the microwave. And the steady whir of the vending machine. But this morning, the air carried something new, gossip. Maria stepped inside with her lunch bag clutched tightly against her chest. The room fell quiet for a moment, as if her presence was the spark they'd been waiting for. That's her, someone whispered in Spanish. The maid who saved the guest. She speaks French, I heard. No, German. My friend at the front desk said she shouted in. Like, 4 different languages. Yeah, right. She probably just screamed louder than the rest of us. Laughter erupted. Maria kept her eyes on the floor, moving quickly toward the far corner where an empty chair waited. She sat, unwrapped her sandwich, and forced herself to chew though her stomach twisted with unease. Maria, one of the younger housekeepers, called across the room. Say something in French. Come on, let's hear it. More laughter. Maria's cheeks burned. She gave a small, polite smile but said nothing. Her English was serviceable, her Spanish fluent, her French and German once sharp but dulled by years of disuse. She had no energy for mockery. The voices continued, some curious, some mocking, some edged with jealousy. She wants attention, that's all. Imagine thinking languages matter when you're scrubbing toilets. She probably memorized a few phrases from a phrasebook. Maria clenched her sandwich tighter. She wanted to disappear into the chair, into the walls. Yet, a stubborn spark inside her refused to shrink. She had done something that mattered. The man might be alive because she had spoken. Flashback, the university days. The whispers dragged Maria's mind back to another cafeteria. Years earlier, across the border and across a lifetime. It had been the second semester at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. She was 19, brimming with dreams. Her notebooks overflowed with conjugations, phonetic symbols, and scribbled translations of song lyrics. She remembered sitting with her classmates under the shade of a jacaranda tree. Their laughter mingling with the rustle of purple blossoms. Someday, her friend Isabel had said, we'll be translators for diplomats. We'll sit in glass booths, with headphones, changing words into bridges. Maria had laughed, her heart soaring. I want to travel. France, Germany, maybe even the US. I want to hear the world. She had believed it then, with the fierce certainty of youth. But reality crept in. Her father's factory closed. Her mother's medicine became expensive. Tuition fees grew heavier. Maria took night shifts at a diner, fell asleep over textbooks, and still couldn't keep up. When the university sent the warning about overdue payments, Maria knew she couldn't afford her dream anymore. Her last day in class, she'd lingered outside the language lab. Her professor, a kind woman with silver-streaked hair, had stopped her. Maria, you have a gift, she'd said in Spanish. Don't waste it. The world needs voices like yours. Maria had smiled politely, swallowing the ache. She never told her that the world also needed rent money. By the end of the month, she was on a bus to New York. By the end of the year, she was wearing a maid's uniform. Back to the present. Maria, hey. The voice pulled her back. It was Rosa, one of the older housekeepers, who slid into the chair beside her. Rosa wasn't one for gossip. She had worked at the hotel for 2 decades. Knew every corner, every trick, every secret. You did good yesterday, Rosa said quietly, her tone firm. Don't let them make fun. You saved a man's life. Maria lowered her gaze. I only called the ambulance. You spoke to them, didn't you? In their language, Rosa pressed. Maria hesitated, then nodded. Rosa smiled knowingly. Not everyone can do that. Don't hide it. Maria wanted to believe her. But when she glanced around the room and saw the smirks, the rolling eyes, the whispered jokes, her courage shrank again. The manager's visit. That afternoon, Mr. Caldwell, the hotel manager, called Maria into his office. He was a tall, sharp-featured man with the polished confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Maria, he said, tapping his pen against the desk. I heard about yesterday. Quite eventful. She clasped her hands. Yes, sir. The guest's wife spoke highly of you. Said you calmed her in French. Maria nodded, uncertain whether to be proud or ashamed. Mr. Caldwell leaned back. Well, it's good you were there. But remember, your duties are cleaning, not medical emergencies. We don't want staff stepping outside their roles. Her chest tightened. Of course, sir. Still, he added, softening slightly, thank you for your quick thinking. That will be all. Dismissed. Like a child patted on the head. Maria left the office with mixed emotions. She had done something extraordinary, yet reduced again to invisibility. The phone call. That night, Maria called her younger brother back in Mexico. His voice was cheerful, tired from work. You wouldn't believe what happened. Maria began, telling him the story. When she finished, he laughed in awe. See, I told you your languages weren't wasted. She smiled faintly. But here, I'm just a maid. Maybe. But yesterday, you weren't just a maid. You were the only one who could do it. His words lingered long after the call ended. The turning point. Days passed. The hotel returned to its rhythm. Check-ins. Check-outs. Spotless rooms. Yet something simmered beneath the surface. Guests whispered about the maid who spoke many tongues. Staff gossiped, torn between admiration and ridicule. Maria carried on quietly, her mop and cloth in hand, but her mind alive with questions. Was she destined to remain invisible forever? Or was the world nudging her, reminding her of the girl who once dreamed under the jacaranda tree? As she lay in bed one night, Maria whispered again into the darkness, testing her voice in forgotten words. Je ne suis pas invisible. Ich bin nicht unsichtbar. No soy invisible. I am not invisible. And for the first time, she almost believed it. The Wellington Hotel was quiet in the late afternoon. Sunlight slanting through tall glass windows and casting golden stripes across the marble floor. Maria moved silently with her cart, her body carrying out the familiar motions, polish the brass handles, dust the glass tabletops, adjust the orchids in their vases. It was just another shift, just another day, yet the memory of that night still pulsed beneath her skin, the frantic voices. The man's hand clutching hers. The wife's desperate eyes. She tried to push it aside, telling herself it had been a one-time moment, an accident of circumstance. She was back to her place now, invisible, unseen, until the concierge approached. Maria, he said with a trace of hesitation. The gentleman from Suite 904 is asking for you. Personally, Maria blinked. For me? Yes, Mr. DuPont. The guest you assisted last week. Her chest tightened. The Frenchman, the man who had collapsed in the corridor. He had survived. Relief flooded her, followed quickly by unease. Why would a guest, someone from that polished, unreachable world, ask for her? The meeting. Maria smoothed her uniform nervously as she knocked on the suite door. It swung open to reveal Mr. DuPont, seated in an armchair near the window. He looked weaker than she remembered, pale but alive, with a blanket draped across his knees. His wife stood beside him, her eyes warm with gratitude. Ah, mademoiselle, Mr. DuPont said in French, his voice thin but steady. Please, come in. Maria hesitated, then stepped inside. The wife clasped her hands. Merci, merci. Without you, my husband, I cannot imagine. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Maria shook her head quickly. I only called for help. No, Mr. DuPont interrupted gently. You gave me something more. You gave me calm. In my own tongue. Maria's breath caught. He switched to English, though his accent was thick. How many languages do you speak? She flushed. I studied at university. Before, her voice trailed off. She had no desire to explain the detour from classrooms to hotel corridors. French, Spanish, English, German, the wife guessed. Eyes bright with curiosity. Maria nodded quietly. Yes, but it has been years. Mr. DuPont's gaze was sharp despite his frailty. You must not waste this gift. She lowered her eyes, her fingers curling into her apron. I am just a maid now. The words tasted bitter, but they were the truth she lived every day. A token of gratitude. The DuPonts would not let her leave without offering something. They pressed a small envelope into her hands. Inside, a handwritten note of thanks in elegant French. And a phone number. If ever you need anything. The wife said, please call us. We owe you more than words. Maria tried to refuse, but their insistence was kind. Unwavering. She tucked the envelope away. Her heart tangled between gratitude and disbelief. As she left the suite, she passed two co-workers in the hallway. They eyed her curiously. Why was the guest asking for you? One whispered. She probably forgot to dust something. The other joked. Maria walked on without answering, though her cheeks burned. The rumors spread. By evening, the story had spread. The French guy wanted Maria again. She's talking to him in his own language. Can you believe it? What is she? Some kind of spy maid? Laughter. Always laughter. Yet beneath the mockery, Maria caught another tone. Curiosity. Even respect. For the first time, her name was spoken not just as gossip but as recognition. Still, she retreated into herself, unsure if the attention was a blessing or a curse. Flashback, the dream deferred. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Maria remembered her university days more vividly than ever. She recalled sitting in a lecture hall, the chalk squeaking as her professor wrote conjugations on the blackboard. She had loved the rhythm of languages. The way words could shift and bend. The way a single phrase could unlock another culture. She remembered the pride of her father when she translated a letter from an American business partner. Major, he had said, you will go far, but he had lost his job soon after. Bills piled high. Maria had tried to keep up, late-night jobs, selling old clothes, skipping meals, but the weight crushed her. Dreams cost money, and she had none left to spend. When she left for New York, she promised herself she would return to her studies someday. But years passed, swallowed by work, and the promise faded into dust. Until now, an invitation. A week later, Mr. DuPont requested Maria again, not for cleaning, but for conversation. He insisted she sit with him, share coffee, speak with him in French. His wife smiled, encouraging her. You make him feel at home. She explained. The doctors say comfort helps recovery. Maria hesitated, but when Mr. DuPont asked her to read aloud from a French newspaper he had brought, she obeyed. The words rolled off her tongue slowly at first, rusty, but soon smoother, like a forgotten melody remembered. Mr. DuPont closed his eyes, smiling. It is like music, he murmured. Something stirred inside Maria. For the first time in years, she felt like more than a maid. She felt like the woman she had once dreamed of becoming. The manager notices. When Mr. Caldwell, the hotel manager, learned of Maria's visits to the DuPonts, he frowned. Maria, you must understand, he said sternly. Your role is housekeeping, not entertaining guests. She nodded quickly. Yes, sir. But then he added, reluctantly, still, if it improves their experience. Perhaps, continue. Quietly. His words were grudging, but Maria caught the flicker of calculation in his eyes. For him, her talent was not a gift, but a tool, a way to please important guests. Still, it gave her something she had not felt in years, validation. A spark of confidence. That night, Maria walked home lighter, on the crowded subway, surrounded by strangers speaking in dozens of accents. She didn't feel so small. She whispered French phrases under her breath, tested German sentences in her mind, replayed Spanish idioms. Words she had buried rose up like flowers after rain. And when she reached her tiny room, she pulled out an old notebook, creased, yellowed, filled with vocabulary lists. She had carried it across the border, hidden in her suitcase. She opened it now, tracing the faded ink with trembling fingers. For the first time in years, she dared to believe, perhaps her languages were not wasted. Perhaps they were waiting. The Wellington Hotel glittered that evening, its lobby glowing beneath crystal chandeliers. Guests moved like silk, dressed in tailored suits and flowing gowns, while the staff bustled quietly in the background, polishing every detail into perfection. Maria moved among them silently, pushing her cart, invisible as always. But things were not as they once were. Since Mr. DuPont's recovery, whispers followed her like shadows. That's her, the maid who speaks all those languages. She's the one who saved the Frenchman. Right? Strange, isn't it? A maid who sounds like a professor. The words made her skin prickle. Some were spoken with admiration, others with disbelief, and some with mockery so sharp it stung. The manager's praise. At the weekly staff meeting, Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. I'd like to acknowledge Maria, he announced, his tone brisk but calculated. She has unique skills that proved useful recently. Mr. DuPont and his wife were most grateful. The room turned toward her. Maria felt heat flood her cheeks. She wanted to disappear into her chair. Languages, one bellboy muttered loudly. We're not a school, we're a hotel. A few chuckled. Mr. Caldwell raised his hand. Regardless, it reflects well on the Wellington. Guests appreciate when staff go above and beyond. Maria nodded quietly, murmuring, "Thank you, sir." But the moment she stepped out of the room, she heard the laughter start again. The mockery. In the staff locker room, two housekeepers leaned against the lockers, their voices sharp with envy. So now she thinks she's better than us, just because she knows some fancy words. She's still scrubbing toilets like the rest of us. Maria pretended not to hear as she changed into her uniform. But their words burrowed deep, coiling inside her chest. She wanted to shout that she didn't think she was better, that she had never asked for recognition. All she had done was speak, act, help. But silence was easier. Silence had always kept her safe. Flashback, the sting of failure. That night, Maria's mind wandered again, back to the moment her university dreams collapsed. She remembered sitting in her professor's office, clutching a letter of tuition debt in trembling hands. "I cannot pay," she had whispered, her voice cracking. Her professor had looked at her with kind but helpless eyes. "Maria, you have a gift, but without resources." The shame had burned hotter than any fire. She had walked out of that office feeling small, defeated, invisible, and now, years later, she felt the same sting whenever her coworkers mocked her. Recognition brought not only light, but also shadow. A guest's request. One evening, as Maria delivered fresh towels to a suite, a couple from Germany stopped her in the hallway. "Entschuldigung," the man said, struggling with his English. "Do you speak German?" Maria hesitated, then answered softly, "Ja, ich spreche Deutsch." Their faces lit up. "Oh, wunderbar. Could you help us with directions? We are lost in this city." Maria guided them patiently, explaining in their tongue how to reach the subway, which lines to take, where to transfer. Their relief and gratitude filled her with quiet pride. But just as they walked away, another staff member snorted behind her. "What are you, a tour guide now?" The laughter that followed was sharp as broken glass. The breaking point. Days later, Maria entered the break room and found silence fall instantly. Conversations halted. Eyes darted toward her, then away. On the bulletin board, someone had taped a scrap of paper. "Professor Maria, ask about grammar while she cleans your toilet." The room erupted with muffled giggles. Maria froze. Her throat tightened. She felt her hands tremble as she turned away, leaving her lunch untouched. In the restroom, she splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. For a moment, the woman staring back looked like a stranger, eyes tired, shoulders hunched, voice swallowed. But then she remembered Mr. DuPont's words. "You must not waste this gift." She straightened, wiping her face dry. Rosa's wisdom. That evening, Rosa found her folding towels in the laundry room. "They're cruel because they're jealous," Rosa said simply, her voice low but firm. "Don't let them take your light." Maria swallowed hard. "Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier to stay silent." Rosa shook her head. "Meja, silence makes you invisible. But your voice, It makes you unforgettable. You have something they don't. Don't hide it. Maria stared at her friend, the weight of those words pressing into her chest. Unforgettable. Could she ever believe that about herself? A small defiance. The next day, when another guest approached her in Spanish asking for assistance, Maria didn't lower her voice or glance around nervously. She spoke clearly, confidently, guiding them with ease. She saw the glances from nearby staff, the raised eyebrows. But for once, she didn't shrink. She let her words flow, carrying her truth with them. And though some whispers followed, so did something else: admiration. The hotel's choice. At the end of the week, Mr. Caldwell summoned her again. Maria, he said, we've had multiple guests compliment your linguistic assistance. It reflects well on the Wellington. Her heart pounded. Perhaps, he continued, we might formally note your skills on record. It could be useful for international guests. Maria nodded, words caught in her throat. For the first time, her gift was no longer just gossip, it was recognized. If only in the smallest way. But she also knew, with recognition came scrutiny. Admiration and ridicule walked hand in hand. That night, as she walked home beneath the flickering streetlights of Queens, Maria whispered to herself in every language she knew. I am not invisible. Je ne suis pas invisible. Ich bin nicht unsichtbar. No soy invisible. Her voice trembled, but it carried, and for the first time, she felt that perhaps, even if the world mocked, even if shadows lingered, her words could no longer be silenced. The shrill alarm split the night like a blade. Maria jolted upright, her mop slipping from her hands as red lights flashed along the corridor. Guests spilled out of their rooms in confusion, their voices clashing in a dozen languages. Fear thick in the air. Phew, phew, a Frenchman shouted. Fuego, que pasa? Cried a Spanish woman clutching her child. Wo ist der Ausgang? A German tourist demanded. Eyes wild. The hotel lobby, usually a palace of calm luxury, erupted into chaos. The smoke detectors wailed. A thin haze drifted from the service stairwell, acrid and choking. Maria's heart hammered. The official staff response team was nowhere in sight yet. Security guards yelled in English, but most guests didn't understand. Panic surged like a rising tide. And then, instinct took over, taking command. Maria climbed onto a low marble step and raised her voice, louder than she had ever dared before. Silence, please, she shouted in English, then quickly repeated in French. German, Spanish. Heads turned. The noise dimmed just enough for her words to cut through. She pointed toward the nearest exit. This way, follow me. Again, she repeated the command in every tongue she knew. Something shifted. People listened. Her voice, strong and clear, threaded through the panic. She took the lead, moving swiftly toward the stairwell, waving her arms to guide them. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Elderly guests leaned on younger ones. But they moved, because someone was finally speaking to them in words they understood. Through the smoke, the stairwell was dim, smoke curling like fingers along the ceiling. Some guests began to cough. A woman in German cried out, "Wir sterben here." Maria turned back, her voice firm in German. 9. Alles wird gut. Folgen Sie mir. No, everything will be fine. Follow me. She reached for the woman's hand, squeezing it. The woman's panic subsided just enough to keep moving. Another guest stumbled, his Spanish breaking into sobs. No encuentro a mi hija. I can't find my daughter. Maria scanned the crowd, spotting a frightened girl clinging to the banister. She crouched, calling out in Spanish, Ven aquí, mi ama, tu papa está aquí. Come here, sweetheart. Your papa is here. The girl ran into her father's arms. Relief washed over the man's face as he mouthed, Gracias. The collapse of authority. At the landing, a security guard finally appeared, shouting only in English. Everyone calm down, stay in line. But his words sparked more confusion, and the crowd pushed dangerously close to panic again. Maria stepped forward. I'll translate, she shouted, before repeating the instructions in 3 different languages. The guard looked stunned, then nodded quickly, letting her take the lead. For the first time, Maria wasn't invisible to authority. She was indispensable, guiding light, down floor after floor. Maria's voice never stopped. Commands, reassurances, directions, flowing effortlessly between tongues. To the French, restez ensemble. Presque. To the Germans, noch ein Stockwerk. Dan Frischer Luft. To the Spanish, estamos cerca. Ya casi salimos. Her throat burned from smoke and shouting. But she pressed on. She was the bridge holding him together. Out into the night. At last, they burst through the emergency exit into the cold night air. Guests spilled into the street. Coughing, crying, clinging to one another. Fire trucks roared up, sirens blaring. Firefighters rushed inside. Maria stood on the sidewalk. Chest heaving, soot smudging her cheeks. Around her, the guests she had guided turned toward her with gratitude in their eyes. A French woman kissed her cheek, whispering, "Un ange." A German man clasped her hand, murmuring, "Danke." A Spanish family hugged her tightly, the little girl pressing her face into Maria's apron. Tears pricked Maria's eyes. She had been their anchor, their voice, their guide. The manager's realization. Minutes later, Mr. Caldwell arrived, his tie askew, his face pale. He scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on Maria, surrounded by guests who clung to her as if she were a savior. For once, he looked at her not as a maid, but as something more. You let him out," he stammered. Maria swallowed, her throat raw. I just spoke to them." But the truth hung heavy in the air. She had done what no one else could. The weight of silence. When the fire was declared under control, it had been a kitchen blaze. Quickly contained, guests were ushered back in. The danger had passed. Yet for Maria, the night lingered like fire in her chest. She sat on the curb after, exhausted, watching the flames of the fire truck's lights flicker against the hotel's glass facade. For so long, she had believed her voice was wasted. Tonight, it had saved lives. But she also knew the truth. Recognition could come. But so could ridicule. Tomorrow might bring both. For now, though, she let herself breathe. For now, she let herself believe. A seed of change. As dawn broke, Maria whispered softly, her voice hoarse but steady. Je suis forte. I am strong. Ich habe es geschafft. I did it. Lo logré. I succeeded. I did it. For the first time, the words didn't feel like dreams. They felt real. The Wellington Hotel had never looked so radiant. That evening, the grand ballroom was bathed in golden light. Crystal chandeliers sparkling above polished marble floors. Round tables dressed in white linen circled the stage, where a gleaming podium waited. The air buzzed with anticipation. Guests, staff, and dignitaries alike filled the hall. Maria stood in the back, her hands folded tightly in front of her apron. She had been summoned here but not told why. Her heart pounded in her chest. A trapped bird desperate for release. The announcement. The general manager, Mr. Caldwell, stepped onto the stage. His usual briskness was softened by something else tonight. Pride. Perhaps. Or calculation. Maria wasn't sure. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight we honor one of our own. A member of our staff who, in recent weeks, demonstrated extraordinary courage, compassion, and skill." The crowd murmured with curiosity. Maria's palms grew damp. Mr. Caldwell's eyes scanned the room before landing on her. "Maria Alvarez, please join us." Gasps. Applause. The scrape of chairs. Maria froze. "Go," Rosa whispered at her side. Eyes shining. Maria's legs trembled as she walked forward. The applause swelling, filling her ears like thunder. She climbed the steps, blinking under the spotlight. The speech. Mr. Caldwell gestured toward her. "Many of you know the story. When a guest suffered a medical emergency, Maria's quick thinking and multilingual ability calmed his family and ensured help arrived swiftly. Days later, when a fire broke out, she guided dozens of international guests to safety, speaking to each in their own language. Because of her, panic was contained. Lives were saved. Applause erupted again, louder this time. Maria's throat tightened. She has reminded us all that true hospitality is not just service, it is humanity. He turned to her, smiling. "Maria, on behalf of the Wellington Hotel, we honor you." He handed her a framed certificate and a small medal that gleamed under the lights. Maria stared at it, her vision blurring with tears. She had never held anything so heavy with meaning. Maria's words. The crowd quieted, waiting. Maria realized they expected her to speak. Her chest rose and fell as she clutched the microphone. Her voice trembled at first. I don't know what to say." She glanced at the faces before her, guests in gowns, co-workers in uniforms, strangers from many nations. And then, something inside her shifted. She spoke, not just in English, but in every tongue she knew. Thank you, merci, gracias, danke. Her voice grew stronger. I once thought my languages were wasted. I thought my dreams had ended when I left university. But last week, I learned something. Knowledge never disappears. It waits, like a seed, for the right moment to grow. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But she kept going. I am a maid. Yes. But I am also a woman who carries words across borders. And last week, those words became bridges. If I could help someone because of them, then my life has meaning. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of hands clapping, soft at first, then swelling into a standing ovation. Maria covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Flashback, her father's voice. In that moment, she remembered her father back in Mexico, telling her, Mija, you will go far. She remembered her professor's words, don't waste your gift. For years, she had believed she had failed them. But tonight, she felt them with her. Proud. The transformation. After the ceremony, guests approached her, thanking her, shaking her hand, some even asking to take photographs. A German couple pressed her palms, whispering, Du bist unser Engel, you are our angel. A French child tugged at her sleeve, saying softly, Merci, madam. Even her co-workers looked at her differently now. Some ashamed, some in awe. Rosa hugged her tightly, whispering, I told you, Mija, your voice makes you unforgettable. Maria's heart swelled. The envelope. Later that night, when she returned to her small apartment, Maria opened the drawer where she had hidden the DuPont's envelope. She unfolded the note once more. Your voice saved us. Never forget who you are. She traced the words with her fingertips, smiling through her tears. For the first time in years, she no longer felt invisible. Epilogue, a new beginning. Weeks passed. Maria continued her work at the hotel. But everything was different. Guests greeted her with respect. Management occasionally asked her to assist with international visitors. And in the evenings, she studied again, dusting off old textbooks, practicing vocabulary, daring to dream. She wasn't sure what the future held. Perhaps she would remain a maid. Perhaps she would one day teach, or translate, or travel again. But she knew one truth now, clear as the languages she spoke. She mattered. And when she whispered into the night, good night, bon nuit, buenas noches, gute Nacht, her voice no longer echoed in emptiness. It carried into the world. Strong, unforgettable,